Uh-oh. Do you need a step stool?
I'll just put it down a little lower.
Okay, well, we are waiting for one member, but I guess we'll get started because I don't want to, it might be a long night. So, welcome, everybody, to the Comprehensive Plan public hearing before the committee. I just want to take a moment just to thank everybody who's been on the committee. They've been working on this in addition to their regular daily activities. And in this case, I know that two of them started at 8 o'clock this morning at a meeting about the new town hall, so it's been a long day for some of them. So maybe that's why Jane's on here, she's napping. Anyway, so I want to thank them because, you know, it is a lot of work, and everyone's been doing their best to keep up with it. So we're going to do a brief presentation. The planners are going to go walk through a presentation. Just from our perspective tonight, it's really to hear from you. We've been working on this. We have a draft. Again, keep in mind, it is still a draft that, you know, we've worked on, but there's still room for improvement. So we're going to listen to what everybody has to say. The committee will, you know, consider it and will likely make additional changes to the draft. When the committee's happy with it, it's going to go to the town board. So they're going to be the ultimate deciders on whatever is in this actual document. That will be in the fall when people are back. We know the summer's kind of tough, but we didn't want to slow the process down, so we figured that for tonight, we would just do for the committee. So there will be a second hearing down the road with another version, and again, the town board may make additional changes at that time. So I'm going to let them make a presentation. Everyone, we're going to give you 5 minutes to speak. We ask that you know, basically keep it on topic. This is not a town board meeting where you can talk about anything. It's just about the comprehensive plan. With that, I guess I'll just let you take it away.
So I'm Ashley Lai. I'm from ACARA for the planners on the project. I'm joined by my colleague Sachi Pandy from Mud Workshop. So as Supervisor Kenny said, we're going to give you a brief overview of how we got to where we are today and what's in the comprehensive plan. Then we will be taking public comments. This is our opportunity to hear from the public on your thoughts on how the comprehensive plan has come together and your recommendations for changes, any edits you may have, and we'll take those back to the committee for discussion to figure out what needs to change. And then we'll have just a recap of the next steps.
Ashley, I just want to, a lot of people have been sending written comments, just so everyone knows they are being, you know, we've shared with the committee, shared with the planners, so if you send in written comments, they are also being considered. You don't need to be here tonight, so for people watching at home.
Absolutely. And we are recommending that the written comment period be held open until August 12th. Then we'll take all the comments back to the committee, go through them all, come up with a revised draft. It'll go to the town board, and there will be another opportunity for public comment there. So I know what I just summarized there, but so right now you have a full draft of the comprehensive plan. This is the first of 2 required public hearings. It's the comprehensive plan committee public hearing. The second public hearing will be with the town board. As I mentioned, following this, it'll be revised based on the comments that we get tonight and during the written comment period. We will prepare a revised full draft. That'll be referred to the town board. It will also be referred to Rockland County. And then following that referral, the town board will take it up, have another public hearing on the document. It'll go through the seeker process. And then ultimately, the town board will be the board that considers adoption.
Actually, real quick, I know we send it to Rockland County. Do we send it to our land use boards too?
Yes, you can send it to your planning board as well,
Okay.
yes. So throughout this process, we've had a pretty engaging public process. We had an online survey. We had 3 in-person public workshops. We had 1 virtual public workshop. We had a public engagement platform online that people were able to use to submit comments and make comments on a map. And we had regular CPC meetings throughout the process that were open to the public. The comp plan is divided into basically 8 main chapters. The first chapter is a general summary of the comprehensive plan, what a comprehensive plan is, and what it sets out to do. So just to be clear, the comprehensive plan is a policy document. It guides the future land use goals and other goals of your community, and it informs your zoning code. It informs what you want to see in terms of capital improvements. But it is not a law itself. It's a policy document. So ultimately, any zoning changes would have to follow in a separate process. But what it does is it does in the first chapter, in the land use and zoning chapter, it does outline some strategies and some comments on what possibly should be changed within the town zoning code. So one comment we heard a lot was the current zoning code is difficult to understand, it's outdated, there's some outdated definitions, there's things that should be updated to improve its readability, which would help also with enforcement and would help the planning board in their review of applications. We heard that there are certain areas of the town, in particular Route 303, where there's some traffic concerns. So it made some recommendations for some performance standards that could be put in place to help with things like traffic, and some design standards potentially to address some of the concerns about certain uses. We heard a lot from the public about warehouses and warehouses within the community. In terms of community character and historic resources, this is the second chapter within the code, within the comp plan. We heard a lot about the importance of preserving the town's historic character, especially the hamlets, the historic hamlets. So it recommends maintaining the existing historic preservation tools that the town has, looking into potentially identifying additional historic resources, and looking into programs that could help the town in their preservation of additional resources. In the transportation chapter, we recommend adding additional sidewalks and protected on-street bicycle lanes where there's roadway space available. We understand that it might not be feasible everywhere, but biking within the community does seem to be very popular. You have some great rail trails. It recommends limiting and consolidating driveways along major roadways, and that's something that could be implemented during a planning board review process, especially along the New York State roads 303, 304, and 340. And what that does is it helps consolidate the driveways, and you have fewer entry points, fewer potential points for conflicts with vehicles on the roadway. It also recommends adding and expanding park and ride lots near major commuter stations, and to increase parking supply in areas with high demand. So all of these strategies and tools for implementing these strategies are detailed in the draft comp plan, which has been available on the town's website, and there are a couple hard copies floating around tonight. Economic and development and downtown revitalization. This chapter focuses on some strategies for revitalizing some of the hamlet centers. It focuses on things like placemaking strategies and encouraging community events, farmers markets, things that bring people to downtown. It recommends infill development as an opportunity. So instead of, when you're looking at a space or a building that's underutilized, doing contextual infill development that maintains the street wall, that can add some vibrancy to the town, and then addresses some of the needs in terms of commerce and recreation activities that we heard through our public survey process were desired.
Thank you. And so parks and open spaces and recreation were also, is chapter 6, I believe, of the comprehensive plan. And, we did a really robust inventory of the open spaces and recreation in the town. But I think that what we heard from everybody is that they would like more access to open spaces and recreational facilities within the town. So with that big goal in mind, the 3 broad strategies, the categories of strategies that we have is regulatory. How we do that is through regulatory recommendations, which involve potentially using conservation easements or protecting view sheds. And we've highlighted some of the areas where these could be broadly applied. But again, as Ashley pointed, that the comprehensive plan is really just a guidance document. It does not actually change any regulation, but it provides guidance to what may follow.
Yeah, the problem is people, can you use the microphone? Because there are people watching on Facebook Live and they can't hear it when we're not using the microphones.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, they can hear you, but on
Great.
people on TV can't.
Then the next layer of these strategies are really programmatic, where we have, talked about how we can include a much wider range as well as age group of residents within activating the parks, as well as considering different programs within our parks and expanding that. And then lastly, thinking about a master plan which would not only identify places where the connections between the different parks can actually be strengthened or introduced where they don't exist, so that there can be better continuity between the town's blue and green networks, as we've defined it. One is sort of the parks networks, and one is the one with the lakes. And lastly, there might be other strategies which could include potentially identifying places that could be acquired, or partnerships that would then increase access to parks. Then the next chapter is on sustainability and climate resiliency. We did do a thorough analysis of the threats, including the flooding, the steep slopes, and the, just the variety of wetlands that town of Orangetown has. And, what this really, what we really found is that given that the extreme climate events impact everybody, we've tried to come up with strategies where everybody can participate in, in these strategies. So whether it is a town-wide strategy which would involve mitigating harmful impacts of flood events by preventing root cause of where contamination starts and taking care of that, or it would be things like in your own backyard, such as thinking about tree ordinances or protecting trees as much as possible. So there's a range of strategies which range from addressing air pollution, water pollution, as well as ways to make green mobility more accessible to everybody in the town.
So now we will be taking public comments. So as was mentioned earlier, it's 5 minutes per speaker. Each person is welcome to speak once. Written comments are welcome and encouraged. Certainly if you brought written comments with you tonight and you want to hand them in up here, it'll certainly make us, it makes it easier for us to make sure that we accurately captured your comment. So certainly hand them in if you have them. And then written comments will be accepted until Friday, August 12th.
Okay, so we did have some people sign up. Mike, Andrea? No, it does, I have the sheet, but when everyone's done who signed up, I'm going to call people whoever, so you don't need to sign up.
Okay. I'm Michael Andrea from Blauvelt. I'm a member of the Orangetown Environmental Committee and also a member of the Orangetown Parks Development Advisory Committee. And I'm kind of speaking for both committees tonight. Both committees submitted detailed recommendations to the group. The Parks Committee really just submitted them this week, so I don't believe they were incorporated. And I'll just kind of summarize briefly some of the major recommendations that both committees recommended. The OEC submitted recommendations that included developing a townwide climate action plan, recommendations for open space, recommendations for protecting our watersheds, tree management and programs to encourage planting of appropriate trees. We included recommendations for energy, including the community choice aggregation program. And I noticed, I was very happy to see that the group recommended renewables rather than fossil fuels in the community choice aggregation program. Actually, the board will be receiving a recommendation from the Environmental Committee, I think tomorrow, regarding renewables.
They're going out for bids, though. We're not going to have the bids until August.
No, I understand that,
Okay.
but it was just a recommendation.
Okay.
It was just our recommendation. We also made recommendations in terms of improving air quality, recycling, food scrap processing, green waste processing, light pollution, transportation, and then using local resources like the people at Lamont Dougherty who are experts, the people at Cornell Cooperative Extension, and other outside expert groups who could help the town in terms of environmental issues. The Parks Advisory Committee submitted a few recommendations just this week, so I know they're not incorporated, but some of the things that I've seen in the draft do include that. We recommended protection of waterways such as the Hudson River, Spark Hill Creek, and Lake Tapan, and increasing public access to these natural resources. We recommended acquisition of privately owned open space, especially waterfront properties, as these properties become available by seeking county, state, and federal funding. We recommend developing a volunteer network to help preserve and maintain our parks and trails, including the Erie Trail and connecting paths. And once again, we recommend connecting with experts in forest and tree management, such as Cornell, the Invasive Species Task Force, and the New York Trail Conference to help deter and mitigate damages to our forests from invasive species like the spotted lanternfly. Many of our recommendations by both committees look like they've been addressed in the plan. I encourage residents who have not read the document to sit down and take the time to do it. It's a very, very comprehensive document, comprehensive plan. I'm sure there are recommendations that some might object to, and there may be items that are important to others, but that have not been addressed in this plan. In terms of next steps and action items, the town board and town employees cannot accomplish the goals of the comprehensive plan without the support of town residents. Public outreach, educational events, volunteer events, and a climate work group can all help meet the goals. The town board should seriously consider using a freelance grant writer or grant writers to assist the town in identifying grants to offset the cost of some of the projects recommended in this comprehensive plan. When the plan is finalized, it should be a working document that can be used not only by the current town board, but by succeeding administrations. Many recommendations from the 2003 plan were never really implemented or partially implemented. The town has invested a huge amount of time and expense in this project, so let's not waste this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person signed up is S.K. Bailey.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us the time to speak. My name is S.K. Bailey, and I reside on South Boulevard in the Nyack Heights section of South Nyack on the upper mountainside. I strongly oppose a proposed change in Orangetown's regulation of trees on private property, as set forth in Chapter 2 of the draft comprehensive plan at page 54, paragraph 2, which states, and I quote, "Update the tree preservation code to regulate the removal of mature trees, for example, 8 inches diameter or breast height or greater, on private property." Mountainous areas of eastern Orangetown have suffered an environmental disaster as a result of colonization by invasive Norway maples, tree of heaven, also known as Chinese sumac, and black locust. Because these invasives grow very fast, begin propagating at a very early age, and produce quantumly greater numbers of seeds than native trees, they have overwhelmed and displaced the native oaks, sugar maples, and ash trees. My own property has been invaded by scores of Norway maples. The invasives have short lifespans and do not produce strong wood. In addition, because of their shallow root systems, even healthy trees regularly fall without warning. Numerous houses, cars, etc. have been struck by falling invasives in the eastern areas of Orangetown. They represent a substantial danger to the property and lives of residents. This is a problem which has been created by the riverfront villages in the town intentionally planting the fast-growing invasive species as shade trees throughout the entire 20th century. Further, this disaster has been amplified by misguided attempts of the villages to protect native trees through regulation. Oak trees can take more than 50 years to reach a size of 8 inches in diameter measured at breast height. The invasives reach this size in 5 to 8 years. Consequently, such regulatory attempts result in protecting the invasive trees, allowing them to seed at an ever greater rate and colonize additional areas, depriving the native trees of nutrients and water and displacing them, precisely the opposite of the intent of the regulation. The regulation of trees in the villages has also had a substantial effect on the cost for homeowners to perform routine maintenance. The smaller landscape and tree companies, which are licensed by the county, insured, and skilled in this field, will not work in areas which are regulated. These operations do not want to deal with the extensive bureaucracy and paperwork. Consequently, only the larger tree removal organizations, which have heavy equipment, employ numerous clerks, lawyers, etc., and are comfortable dealing with governmental bureaucracy, will work in regulated areas. The net result is that the cost of routine maintenance or tree removal is 3 to 5 times as much as it would be in an unregulated area. This impacts even those whose properties are not, at this point, invaded. A resident of a development in Tappan, Orangeburg, or Pearl River, who needed to have the limb of a large tree which threatened their house removed, would be subjected to these additional outrageous costs, just as would those of us who live in actual forested areas. Recent court decisions have indicated such general tree regulations on private property constitute a regulatory taking and are unconstitutional. Attempts to institute the regulatory scheme outlined in the draft comprehensive plan will undoubtedly involve the town in expensive litigation. We all love the native trees and want to see them preserved. Due to the misguided regulatory approach emanating from the riverfront villages, which Orangetown now proposes to emulate, the native climax forest is being destroyed. The fact of the matter is this proposed legislation in the draft comprehensive plan will not protect our wonderful oaks and ashes. It will protect the invasives and ensure that they completely eliminate the native trees. It will further endanger the physical safety of the residents of mountainous areas and their personal property, devalue their real property, and needlessly increase the costs of routine maintenance for everyone in Orangetown. Ultimately, I don't believe any of us living in forested areas should have to get permission from a government bureaucracy in order to protect ourselves or our property. And I absolutely do not believe we should have to deal with dangerous conditions which our government makes worse through their actions. For all of these reasons, I respectfully request that you eliminate this misguided provision, Chapter 2, page 54, paragraph 2, from the comprehensive plan. I sent a letter to Supervisor Kenny and the members of the town board and included pictures. One of a tree that had fallen through the house next door to me, through the roof. The people were out of that house for several months while it was being repaired. And another of a car across the street from my house, which a limb fell on and damaged. I mean, completely, it was totaled. The car was totaled. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you that this is a free country where we get to speak on a public matter.
Absolutely. Okay, Katja Alberino Rappaport.
Good evening, Supervisor Kenny and members of the board. I also am here to just ask if you could please remove the invasive species, tree species, from the comprehensive plan as being a protected tree. I'm also up on the mountainside by Nyack College, and invasive trees have spread all over the area. Since the trees do have shallow roots, they fall regularly and create an extreme hazard to the neighborhood. Please consider removing the section of the comprehensive plan that states there will be regulations for the removal of mature trees 8 inches diameter, breast height or higher on private property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Michael Mandel.
Can I close this laptop up here?
Ashley, can he close the laptop down? Or we'll turn off the, okay. Okay.
Good evening, Supervisor Kenny, members of the town board. My name is Michael Mandel, a resident of Pearl River. I am a member of the planning board. I am here tonight as a taxpaying citizen. I do not represent the planning board in any manner or shape tonight. My comments are related to the draft comprehensive plan, which will govern Orangetown's development for the next 20 years. It is not directed at any member of the board, and in fact, Supervisor Kenny is an opponent of the TOD, which I'll speak about first. There are numerous mentions of housing in TOD, which is transit-oriented development, which calls for high-density housing near transit hubs in the plan. Chapter 2, Current and Future Land Use, page 42. 2018 Pearl River TOD Opportunities, Pace Law Center's Downtown Revitalization of Pearl River Report notes, residents have mixed views, including greater variety of housing and area around the train station could accommodate higher intensity of land use and taller buildings. This is not the view of Pearl River residents have. The report states this is based on residents' input. However, these meetings were attended by residents townwide, not just Pearl River, and reflected all views. Page 26, Bullet 2, calls for promoting diversity of housing options, but does not define the options in this section. The idea of housing diversity is mentioned in the introduction, page 18, promoting the diversity of housing. Chapter 5, page 144, TOD opportunities analysis. Bullet 4, support higher density housing closer to train stations. And the study concluded with higher intensity and taller buildings. This must be limited, in my opinion, to a maximum of 2 or 3 stories, or Pearl River will resemble Park Ridge with what they're building there now. We want to maintain the character of Pearl River and not become an urban hub. Under transportation, chapter 4, page 116, calls for added and expanded park and ride lots for Pearl River and Nyack. Page 118 calls for increased parking supply, and page 119. This would be good for increased weekend visitations to downtown areas. As a resident of Pearl River for 40 years, these parking lots on William Street, the MTA lots along 304 and Street Parking have never, ever been full, and this is even before COVID. Chapter 8, Transportation, page 236, recommends the conversion of large parking areas into bi-level garages. This does not improve the visual environment of the downtown and does not make it more attractive to visitors. The introduction, Goal 4, promotes sustainable development plan for climate resiliency. Page 20, Objectives 3 and 7 call for streamlined and fast-track approvals to encourage green buildings technology and retrofit of older buildings, creating 2 different tracks for approval. This implies special treatment and sets a dangerous precedent. All applicants must be treated equally and not differently. The plan in Chapter 5, Economic Development, on page 27 states, over the age of 55 cohort is increased from 26.5% of the town's population in 2000 to 32.8% in 2020. The plan does not address the use of pack zones in downtown areas such as Pearl River, which provides public transportation, restaurants, shops, parks, and other amenities for this age group, and will bring other businesses into the area, such as medical facilities, condominiums, as well as senior center, as noted on page 152 of the report, but is not area-specific. The plan targets Pearl River for TOD development, but skirts over pack zone development. Chapter 7, Sustainability and Climate Resiliency, page 209, and Chapter 8, Transportation, page 234, stresses the need for more sidewalks and bicycle lanes. It states it's good for exercise and recreation. However, more sidewalks increase impervious area. While on page 212, they call for reduction in impervious area to reduce flooding. It's a contradiction. There are several errors in the document. The introduction, page 27, definition, lists East Washington Avenue as a commercial area and omits Central Avenue and Main Street in Pearl River. Chapter 6, open space, map on page 159, and legend that follows shows Cherry Brook Park and Veterans Memorial Park in Blauvelt rather than Pearl River. Tappan Zee High School is in Pearl River, and Tout Park is in Pearl River rather than Nyack. Chapter 7, page 201, map shows Route 304 as 340. And please, remove the New York State solar farm picture on page 223, which is located at Route 304 in North Middletown Road. It has never worked, and it's in the process of being dismantled this time. Thank you for your time.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mike.
it.
Next, I have Jay Nakashima.
Jay Nakashima from Pearl River. Mr. Mandel covered quite a bit of what I wanted to point out, so I'll make it really short. One question I have is, we talk so much about flooding in town and all that, but what about water shortages? You know, how are we gonna deal with that because this is a 10-year plan, and I'm not looking at 2 or 3 years down the road. Is there something we could do with that water that is flooding, or, you know, what do we do with it, and how do we work with water companies to make sure that we have adequate supply of water for the next 10 years? Because it's something we have to think about, and if we look at everything that's going on in the West Coast and down in Kentucky, either you have too much or too little, and I don't think we want to be in that predicament. Also, water is a need for our economic development, so that's another reason why I'm a little concerned, because I don't think we really covered that well. We covered the flooding very well, I believe, but we haven't covered the other side, which is, what do we do if we don't have the water? So that was my 2 points that I just wanted to point out. I think you did a great job, and thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. So that's everybody who signed up, so by now we can do by show of hands. Somebody wants to speak? Okay, the gentleman right here. And if you just would say your name for the record, that'd be fine.
Sure, it's Lee Prismant, and I live in South Nyack, the 8th hamlet of, the newest and 8th hamlet of Orangetown. I want to mention a little bit about that. In the comprehensive plan, chapter 2, there's a discussion of the hamlets, including South Nyack, and it's good, it's accurate, but I think it's missing an important point, which is the historic inventory of the village is quite rich and worthy of consideration for preservation. The reference for that, and I really suggest you look at it, is the environmental impact study that the bridge did under federal law is online. They're chapter 10. There's 12 references to it, historic district in South Nyack. Now, when they say that, they mean it's eligible for districting. They looked at 160 home district, which 130 were contributing. They had 6 styles, all of which are classic from the 1830 to the 1930, that century of homes, and it was eligible under 2 of the 3 criteria for national districting. Criteria A, which is contribution to the local history. Criteria C, which is by far the most important, I think, for this document, which is the continuity, which can only be maintained through preservation efforts, which up to this point have been lacking, sadly, I think. But luckily, Orangetown has mechanisms of preservation, of historic preservation, and protects quite well Palisades, Tappan, or historic districts, which are nationally registered. This is eligible, not registered. So I suggest in the plan that it mentioned that there's this recognized eligible area, that it be considered for registration, and it be considered for protection under the other vehicles that are available for historic preservation within Orangetown. The last comment, in the 1 minute, oh, by the way, that's just one of many in South Nyack. That was the one that the bridge was impacting, so that was the one that under 106 of the National Preservation Law they were required to look at. So there are more. The depot, where the historic homes of the railroad workers are, division, many more. But so my suggestion is that in South Nyack or somewhere in chapter 2, there's a suggestion to do some inventory of the homes there, and at least and noting the historic eligibility of one region. Another thing is, the last thing I'll say in my last seconds here, view sheds, and you mentioned it in I think it's point number 5 or 6 of the objectives of the protection of view sheds. There's a lot of view shed that comes with South Nyack of the Hudson River. Those are protected in Hastings, Dobbs Ferry, and you go up and down the Hudson with either overlay districts for view shed protection, or in Piermont and in Grandview with waterfront zoning laws where height regulations are lower, so people can see the river from public roads. And there's a lot of public roads in South Nyack. You're doubling the waterfront of Orangetown when you include South Nyack. And I think some discussion of the review of viewshed regulations locally would be worthwhile.
Thank you. Okay, next. Oh, lots of hands. Over here on the left. We'll go from that side. Yeah, you, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be pointing, but I don't know names.
Thank you Supervisor Kenny and all. My name is Lori Seaman. I'm the founder and member of the Sparkill Creek Watershed Alliance. And I'm here to represent our organization and say thank you so very much for all of your consideration of our comments. And a lot of it does seem to be in the plan, and we find it very encouraging. And I don't have anything to add other than just to say we'd really like to live into this relationship with you. We have recently received a grant to do a watershed characterization plan, which has been a long time needed. And we have some of the top scientists and senior water people in the Hudson Valley working on this with us, and we take it very seriously. We've been in this for like 12 years now, looking at the watershed, and it takes a long time to make big things happen. And I think we're working towards bringing to Orangetown a best view of the watershed that we can provide, and in some ways we can do some work that Orangetown can't even do. And if we can put this together, I think we will be able to really provide a big benefit to Orangetown by understanding how the creek flows through our community and all that it is and all that it isn't, and how we can work together. And I know Jim is so happy to see you. He's been following our work for a good while. But these issues of flooding, and some of them are more municipal oriented, but some of it is just common sense, reaching out to the community and a concerted effort, and helping everybody understand that we're all water managers here in Orangetown, and how we work with our properties. And the creek is exposed. It's not paved over. It's one of the real beautiful assets of it. It's daylighted, and has a big presence, but it really needs community, more of a community effort, I think, to understand its value. Imagine how it's paved over in so many other places. And we have this beautiful creek that really adds value to the town. And we appreciate very much that
Thank
you're
you.
moving in
Thank
our
you.
direction. Thank you.
Okay, a hand in the back.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all again. My name is Fran Oldenburger. I live in Blauvelt. I'm on the Environmental Committee, longtime member of the Environmental Committee, actually from its beginnings. I wanted to make sure that, I'm going to sound like a broken record, because it is one of the things that I think is so unique to this town, and it isn't given enough credit, is the dinosaur property. That property is so valuable for the uniqueness that it could give. And the whole idea of having some kind of a trail that goes from prehistory through Camp Shanks would be wonderful for this town, and to have some kind of a historic trail. And I know the county is on board with preserving that property, so it's just a matter of making sure that it isn't overlooked in the comprehensive plan. So that's all I really wanted to say, and you guys are super and doing a great job, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the gentleman, go ahead. Yeah. I guess I'm going to have to start describing you. I know, we should get a little paddleboard with
Hi.
numbers, right?
Oh, hello, and thank you for the chance to speak. I'm a brand-new resident. It's the first time I've ever done this, so I'm feeling
Well, welcome.
some jitters. Thank you. My name is Declan Zimmerman. My wife, Mandy Goldberg, and I purchased a house a year ago near where Sharon Bailey lives on South Boulevard on the mountainside in what was South Nyack. And I'm here to speak about a lot of the same concerns that Sharon touched on, but I won't hit all those same points again. I did send a similar letter to all of you. But just to be clear in this meeting, specifically that the updating the code to require permits of removing trees not be a provision. And here's why. I'll speak specifically to our property. First of all, I'm a hiker and a camper, and we bought a wooded lot because we like the woods. We are not here to cut down trees, But when I moved in, I found that the oaks and the pines are choked out by all of these groves of these fast-growing, what I learned are these invasive Norway maples. And I also then learned in South Nyack, I wasn't allowed to take them down. I can see the old trees that are there stunted on the side by these things that are shooting up. Since then, I've had tree consultants out who point out mushrooms growing out of a black locust that's rotting, that's on the hillside up from us, overhanging our house and threatening our house. So from a safety perspective, I would like the freedom to manage those threats. And I know there's a permitting process, but that's a lot of extra layers. But then furthermore, I agree with Sharon that this is misguided and that I am for beautification and preservation. If you saw where we lived and it was unkempt when we inherited it and hoped to tame it, it is overgrown with vines. It looks like a jungle. It's not pretty, it's not beautiful forest, it's not the green spaces that relax us and beautify the town. Instead, it's this kind of mishmash of vines overgrowing all of these growths. And so the freedom of residents, who I think can be your allies in managing their property and beautifying the town, is something I would like considered. I really appreciate all of your efforts. We came to the workshops, and I appreciate all your inclusion, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. You know, I have to tell you, the trees, we were very confused by the trees comments, because Orangetown, before South Nyack came in, we don't have any restrictions on taking down trees. So I think it was a lot of the South Nyack people that came to our when we had the meet and greets type things, and they're the ones who asked for it. So, yeah, I think that's what happened, and I think we thought that, having some kind of regulation on trees, made sense, but you're right, there's certainly a balance. No one's, again, right now, I could go cut down a tree and I don't need to get any permits in Orangetown, so what's the balance? I can just go cut down a tree or, whatever. So we'll take a look at it, and certainly, I don't think it was ever meant to, I know right now you're not allowed actually in South Nyack unless you can show it's dangerous, or unless because I actually looked it up, I was very confused. Or unless you go to the planning board and show you need to build there or whatever. So anyway, so we're definitely not gonna have that, I'll tell you that. But anyway, but appreciate it. I did have to get to the root of, I was calling it tree gate. I'm like, what's going on? I got people saying want trees, I don't want trees. I was like, so anyway, but it seems like that's what's happening. Okay, anybody else wants to speak? Barbara?
Hi, I'm Barbara. First I wanted to say it cost me $50 to print this. It's 260 pages, which I think is more change than I want for the town. But what I wanted to request is that you could put a paper copy in the library, because sometimes people who are older, and I understand from reading the comp plan that's quite a large percentage of our community, have vision problems. Sometimes their hands shake, and I find it very hard when I try and get information without using the computer, because that's harder for me. It's difficult to run into obstacles. So I wanted to say I read the historic section, and it was lovely. Inspiring, and it went back to many of the areas that our families knew about, and populations. A few things I wanted to mention, because there was a little less about Blauvelt. There was few Blauvelt houses on the historic registers. There was no mention of the German and Italian prisoner camps precipitated by World War II. And Orangeburg was written as a busy commercial zone. And I'm always afraid of overdevelopment. And I noticed it also said in the comp plan that only 30% of the people in Orangeburg wanted a lot more business development. So, those two things didn't seem to go together. In the environmental, I would say, and I've spoken about this before, but it's a disproportionate amount of this paper considering all the other topics. And I just think in terms of environmental, that we make people promises, the people hope the promises will come to be, but they're not always proven results for the projects we take, and often they have a big cost to the taxpayer. So, maybe get that in proportion to what's needed. In one section, which I think is in the May what was put out in May. It said urban foresting practices. That's a quote from the plan. Still not, I still think we need some work for the consultants to get what this town is about. We want our nature to be natural, not remaking of existing areas, natural areas, or just regular community into politically correct parks at great cost to the taxpayer. I have family in Europe, and they protect and take very good care of the what is it, Black Forest in southern Europe, southern by Switzerland, and but they don't turn the parks. They don't cut down all the trees and things and make fancy parks. They take care of their forests. Bicycles. Most people do not want further encouragement of bicycle tourism, as it decreases safety of our tight-knit community. Where I live, most of the people know the people they see. And that's just, there's an element of safety in that, I believe. Throughout the plans, there's a lot of push for flexible housing options, a multifamily cluster, which sounds very similar to federal and HUD land fairness goals of incentivizing communities to add low-income housing and tying grant money to it. We here, I think most people I know want local control of zoning and having the freedom to live in the kind of community we want. Community events, and they had a lot of suggestions for things people could go out into the community to do. I think we should be encouraging people to spend time with their families. Kind of reminds me of Hillary's It Takes a Village. I think families should raise kids, but that's just me. Okay, and then, there's something about, I really appreciate that you guys are letting us submit written comments, because this certainly doesn't cover all I want to say, and I kind of thought it would be like 100-some pages, not 240, so it will take me a little while to get through the rest of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else who hasn't spoke that would like a?
Hi. I'm Jim Castagni from Spark Hill. First, I want to thank everyone up there and their predecessors for bringing the town to such a beautiful place that we live in today. We're very fortunate, and it's reflected in the plan draft. I submitted a letter of comments. I addressed it to the town council, and I asked that it be distributed to the members up there. I should have paid attention, but I focused my efforts on what's behind the cover page. In it are 6 sections with recommendations regarding downtown hamlets, complete streets, commercial vehicle-free zones, public transportation, multi-use paths, parks, historic preservation, and environmental impact reduction and protection. One of my other suggestions in that cover letter was that the town send a letter directly to all the appointed members of our committees and ask them for their written comments, because they truly are the subject matter experts who know our town very well. I grew up in Blauvelt. My family moved here in '64. I live in Spark Hill, and I spent about a decade in New Jersey. And 25 years I commuted to Manhattan, and I've seen communities change along those bus routes. And I'm a past member of the Parks Committee, and I'm a current member of the Traffic Advisory Board. And I think it's important that we get the input from those subject matter experts. A couple of comments specific to the plan. Downtown revitalization. I think it talks about Pearl River, which is undergoing a revitalization. However, I think other hamlets, especially Spark Hill, have really haven't been touched in many, many years. And I would like to see what the streetscapes concept looks like in Spark Hill along Main Street, and maybe some improvements to the park, maybe lighted monuments, and possibly some irrigation for the grass, because it's really difficult there, particularly to maintain the grass because of the fact that it's challenging all over the town, but we have those beautiful World War II monuments, World War I monuments there, and they need to be recognized and maybe highlighted so they could be viewed at night, since the park is usable after dark because of its importance to the hamlet of Spark Hill businesses and restaurants. The DEC produced a report issued in January that talks about replacing the William Street Bridge to make it wider. It's a choke point. Also eliminating the Boss Pond Dam underneath the viaduct, and other recommendations that impact the 50-year and 100-year floodplain. I would like to see, and many others would like to see, the DEC report recommendations included in the fundamental, in the plan. Goal 1 talks about a need for growth. I drove 3 hours up 17 West, and if you want to see areas that need growth, there are towns that I've passed through that really need the attention that of growth that we don't really need here. We don't, I mean, growth shouldn't be a priority, because then we're, packing more into existing space, and I don't think the residents want more in existing spaces. They just want things to be better in the existing spaces. I could be wrong, but where's the growth needed and what type of growth is that? Goal 2, Objective 1, apartment buildings. We need to be specific where those apartment buildings are suggested or recommended. Certainly, there are a lot of people in Spark Hill who don't want to see multifamily townhouses on Main Street because it's a very small street, especially when we have filmings there. It kind of shuts down the whole neighborhood. Goal 4, Objective 4, EV stations. One of the pictures in the plan shows an EV station, and ironically, it doesn't show the World War I or World War II monuments that are in the park where the EV stations were placed. Our former supervisor said that we only need them for 4 years, so I hope those could be removed from the park, since EV stations needed to be located along highways, like the Palisades Parkway or the Thruway. And I don't think we should put them on public land. That's a private use of public property. So, and then also, the pictures in the plan should have the before and after. They show main streets, and those aren't the goals. That's the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back?
Hi, my name's Margaret Bermel. I live in Blauvelt. I'm kind of embarrassed to say, but I really haven't been involved with the plan, looking at it. This is my first meeting that I'm attending, and I will say I'm a little bit concerned, right? I hear about the regulation about trees and private property and what I can and can't do. My husband and I recently have been looking for retirement property, and one of the things we're staying away from is an HOA. And the reason is I don't want to be told that I can't leave my garage door open for X amount of minutes, and et cetera. So that concerns me. The other thing that concerns me is the high density a building. I don't know where that is, what we're looking for, but we moved to Orangetown because it's single family. This is what we like, and this is what we want to preserve. So again, those are things that concern me. I think it was maybe Mr. Mandel mentioned about these commuter lots, and I have to agree with him. I mean, I have gone by the one on 304. There's the one across from, I don't even think they use it anymore, the Palisades Mall. So it's kind of concerning about adding multi lots or buildings. Again, I used to work in Jersey City. That's what I saw. Somebody mentioned about seeing towns. I used to commute down River Road. And River Road, yes, going to Edgewater. It was dilapidated warehouses. They beautified it. But it's congested as can be. I would never commute down River Road now. It would take me double my commute. So I don't want to see that happen to Orangetown. And I know these little things won't impact, but what happens is it will keep encroaching, 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 and Orangetown will no longer be what we know Orangetown today. So again, I apologize for not being involved in the plan. I'm saddened to hear that it's really that many pages. I will try to review that. I also will try to petition my neighbors and let them know what is happening, because I don't think, you know, unfortunately, a lot of us have families, jobs, and we don't get involved. So that's, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else was not? Sure, go ahead.
I think the written comments was August 12th.
Yep.
There's no extension or no other way to comment after that?
So here's the thing. So I think I said at the beginning, at some point, this committee has to give a draft to the town board. So at some point, we have to stop taking comments.
Okay.
Now, there's going to be another public hearing like this
Okay.
with the town board, who will ultimately be the ones who approve it. So there will definitely be other times to comment and even maybe submit comments. But for this draft, at some point, we have to kind of
Okay.
start working on it to get it to the
And I
board.
will just reiterate, I think, again, it was Mr. Mandel, but there definitely should not be two tracks for, if it's diversity gets approved differently, but, you know, everybody should be treated the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else who hasn't had a chance to see? Eileen? Yeah, it says environmental gets streamlined for, yeah, I think she misunderstood.
Good evening, members of the board. I glanced briefly at some of the comments that were on the internet. A couple of the things I pointed out were the consolidating of zones for higher density. Those zones should be made clear to us. These are just bullet points that I did because I was busy. And also, it is a proposed mixed commercial and residential use in the hamlets. I would assume that's all of the hamlets in Orangetown, including South Nyack. Also proposed is a New York State downtown redevelopment grant, to seek a New York State downtown redevelopment grant, or the New York State Empire Plan. I was wondering what effect, if we do apply for those type of grants, what effect would be, is there an effect on our local zoning that we have established here in Orangetown, such as R40, R15, and R80? There's a proposal for new zones for new land use. I'd like to see that being explained very thoroughly. It seems like 7% of the property in Orangetown is commercial, but I was wondering what acreage is involved with 7%, and 5% is industrial. If you could say exactly how much acres are involved in that. 40% of the land is zoned residential. 17% of our property is for public parks or open space. There's also a proposal for a local development corporation, which is a not-for-profit, and they can acquire property. I hope they don't take mine. I like my property. My property is very treed. Believe me, it's very treed. I must have an oak it must be wider than this whole table here, standing in the front of my property. So I'm really a tree hugger and a tree lover. Senior housing, I guess I've reached that age where I consider senior housing, but I don't want to live in like a multifamily area. Years ago, I was up in Ticonderoga, and I saw the most beautiful senior housing complex. It was made of pods, 4 pods. Each pod had 4 units. You walked into, basically the interior was the same. You walked into a living room in the front, kitchenette here, foyer here, living room with the fireplace here. You walk down the hallway, guest bedroom, guest bathroom, full bathroom actually, master bedroom, full bathroom. That to me is senior housing. Little piece of land in the front, a little garden in the back, and a garage. That to me would be ideal for seniors, such as the old military property that we have there on Western Highway. It would be ideal for senior housing. That type of a concept rather than putting people into a multifamily situation. And within that pods, or the pods, you could have activities for seniors. Also, I don't know, maybe it's in the 260 page, is there any opportunity for, like up in Saratoga, they have the Saratoga Performing Arts Center. You have wonderful concerts up there. We need art, culture, and an opportunity. In fact, I passed through Schenectady the other day, and they have a Van Gogh exhibit up there in Schenectady, New York, in a building, an old high school, I guess. They have converted, and they're holding now a Van Gogh exhibit. Does the comprehensive plan include the school population that we have here in Orangetown? Is there any way of knowing, can they project for the next 10 years where the school population will be? Will it grow? Will the population decline? And what impact that would have on the town if those buildings become unusable? Because some of them are pretty big. Would they repurpose their use, and what would happen in that area? They talk about, preserving trees and maintaining trees, but when they ask for high density, you have to take down the trees in order to lay all your buildings adjoining each other. So there's, in my opinion, it's a conflict of saving a tree and yet doing other things. When will the plan be adopted? And if it is adopted, if and when it is subject to a public vote?
No, it's a town board vote.
Town board would vote. And how would you get copies of the 10 cents a copy?
We are going to leave them in the libraries. That was a good suggestion from Barbara, so make sure there's copies of them in the library. And if you really have a problem, we probably have copies from tonight, and we're more than welcome to lend it to you, Eileen, as long as you return it.
I'll never get it back. I'm desperate with the library.
Eileen Larkin. Okay, anybody else who hasn't talked yet that would like an opportunity to speak? Wayne?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Wayne Gavioli, and I live in Orangeburg, New York. I have not fully read the entire proposed plan. I will tell you this, that I was involved in the last master plan of the town of Orangetown. And in fact, when it was challenged by Spring Valley Water, now Suez Water, this town retained me to defend the plan and the zoning code all the way up to the Court of Appeals. And I was 100% successful in that regard. I only bring that out because what occurred at that court proceeding is instructive, very instructive. What did Suez Water come in and argue with their big, fancy New York City law firm? There wasn't enough diversity. There wasn't enough density. There wasn't this, there wasn't that. The only sad thing is, those attorneys didn't know the town the way I knew it. So I was able to tell the 5 judges that were sitting before me what in fact was the truth. And the truth is, this town is wonderfully diverse. There is industrial areas, there are office areas, there are low-density areas, there are high-density areas. And at the end of the day, the court said, Mr. Gavioli, you're right. You have a town that has a very diverse zoning, provides for opportunities for everybody, for industry, for commercial, for people who want to be on larger lots and on smaller lots. What has deeply disturbed me about this plan is the idea of combining zones, not recognizing the existing zoning. We have R40, good, leave it R40. We have R15, and we have other zones. They provide the diversity of zoning in the town that allows for some open space, some more clustered space. We do not need to begin the process of combining this. This is what has happened in Ramapo. Take a drive through there. That place is a disaster. I have 3 litigations in court right now. Just look at it. So you know what the town did? Said, oh, you could put up a 4-family. Was that enough? Nope. Nope. They sued for a 6-family. Was that enough? When is it enough? When is it enough? When do you destroy the entire community? This idea that you need higher density is false. That is a premise in this plan that needs to go, and needs to go now. Because you will destroy the best town in this county. And I tell you that as somebody who has practiced law in this county for 30 years. Nobody wants to be anyplace else but Orangetown. Why? Because there is a diversity. You want to live in the garden apartments in downtown Pearl River? Fine. There's your density. Or other places. There's your density. Every place does not have to be overdeveloped. And your combination, you can combine zones? What zones are you combining? Why? Why can't we have some larger lots, smaller lots, middle lots? This idea in this plan has got to go, and it's got to go now. I'm going to tell you that. We need open space. We have numerous industrial parks in this town, probably more than any other town in this county. We provide for businesses, and we will continue to do so. We do not need to increase multifamily, cluster housing. We don't want to be the Bronx. This plan looks like the Bronx to me. The people who came to this town did not want to live in the Bronx anymore. Don't give us a plan that's going to recreate the Bronx for us. Okay? We don't need cluster housing. We don't need high density. We have a diversity of housing. The Court of Appeals said it, and they agreed with me. So all I'm saying to you, before you start consolidating zones, before you decide we need higher density, take a step back. This is not a plan for the town of Orangetown.
Is anybody else that has not had a chance to speak want to speak? Yeah. 2003.
Hi, good evening, committee. Thank you for this opportunity to hear the public speak tonight. I've had the privilege to come to many of the workshops, and it's been very enlightening. A lot of intelligent, smart ideas being talked about, discussed, and everything. At the last meeting, workshop, I think it was a workshop that we had, the 2 topics that appeared in every single category were flooding and trucks. Every single category. Sustainability, environmental, building, economic. Those were the 2 topics that were in every single category. I'm greatly concerned about any development that is being planned or thought about on the Spark Hill watershed. The flood study should be absolutely heeded. Especially on Route 303, there's development projects that want to be built right on the Spark Hill Creek, and the watershed should not be allowed. There should be strong, definitive language in this comprehensive plan that watershed protection is mandatory. Under transportation, public transportation is really, really important to town of Orangetown, to Rockland. It's really important for people to be able to move around within the town and also their commuters that go to New York City. The public transportation is abysmal. Rockland, before COVID, I worked with the general manager of Rockland Coaches, Matt Bowen, to come up with ways to improve the inconsistent and ineffective bus scheduling. I really hope that the commuter parking lot in Spark Hill will not move forward until Rockland Coaches improves its service. As it is now, busing schedules have come down to 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening into the city. Buses are 20, 30 minutes late, and sometimes they don't even show up. Orangetown needs public service both within the town and to New York. I am willing to work with anybody on a transportation committee to try to improve this service for all of us. Thank you for hearing us tonight and for taking our thoughts into consideration, and for all the work that I know that this is really, really hard to kind of decipher everything that you're hearing. But I hope that you will continue to be open to what we're saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Carol Baxter from Palisades.
She just presumed you knew her. She's like,
I forgot, I lost my head. Carol Baxter from Palisades, thank you.
okay, is anybody else who has not had a chance to speak, would like to speak? Going once? Going twice? Okay, Ashley, you want to? Yeah, I'm just going to say a few words just because I can't help myself. You know, the last master plan was done, I think we said 2003. In New Jersey, they're required to do them every 5 years. The reason that it's done is that things change, uses change. You know, there's uses out there now that data centers that didn't even exist in 2003. So that's why you're supposed to do a master plan and look at making changes. You know, as far as high density, no one in this town board or this committee here is looking to do high density. No one's looking for high rises. But we look at the club at Pearl River, right up here. It looks beautiful. It's beautifully done. It's sold out. They can't keep people's list. It's 55 and older. Some seniors don't want to stay in their house. I appreciate everything that you do, but there's some that don't. But they want to stay here. And unfortunately, our seniors don't have anywhere to go. And even worse, either do our young millennials. And I say this all the time because I have 2 of them. And there's no housing available for a 26, 27, 20-year-old. It's not here. So when we talk about mixed uses, they're talking about the downtown Pearl River area, like they just did with the building. It's called Dion's Way. It's on William Street. They did a beautiful job. You know, I was even skeptical. It looks beautiful. There's offices on the bottom and apartments on the top, rented out right away. So you know, I understand where you're coming from. You want to stay in your house, but not every senior does. But they don't have anywhere to go. Our population in Orangetown has dropped. That should scare everybody. Everybody should say, you know, it has dropped. And it's dropped so much that in 1973, Jim shared with me the other day, our population was 53,000. The last census, it was 48,500. Now, I don't want to be Ramapo. I don't want to be Ramapo. But I think we have to realize that something needs to change. Our population and our youth population should not be changing the way it's changing. That's why we brought in planners, professionals that can look at this. We may not agree on the zones in the end. We may not agree on certain things. But you can't just say, we're going to do nothing. That's why the law requires you to do a master plan, because things have changed. In some ways, we don't like the changes, but they're here. So on that note, with that said, everybody's opinion is heard, it's valued. We just may not agree, but that doesn't mean that anybody is out to drag you out of your house kicking and screaming. It just means that we have different views on maybe the direction of the town. Keeping in mind, this is a policy document. Nothing in here is changing zones, creating anything. The town board would have to do that. And again, the town board will have a chance to review this, and I'm sure what you're seeing now is not going to be the final document. So on that, I'll let Ashley take over.
Thank you. So I did want to just answer one of the questions that came up, just to clarify. On page 65 and 66 is the section of the comp plan that does identify some consolidation areas for certain zoning districts, and it's not saying to consolidate all single-family zones. What we did is we went through the town zoning map and we looked at specific acreages of certain parcels, and we found that there are some districts where the existing lots are undersized for the district. So you may have a house that's zoned R22, but your lot is only 15,000 square feet. So if you want to go and put a deck on your house, that means you have to go get a variance from the zoning board of appeals, potentially, depending on where you put the deck and how big your existing house is. So what we tried to do was identify some of those places where there were pre-existing non-conforming situations that could make it harder for a homeowner to make an improvement to their house. And we flagged those as where the town board may want to consider changing the zoning so that it could be easier for these simple improvements. But certainly, this is just a recommendation. It's not actually changing the zoning. That would come in a later process. But I do recommend taking a look at those 2 pages because I think those answer some of the questions that I heard tonight. But in terms of the next steps, so as was mentioned several times, we are in the middle of the public hearing process. This is not over. This is the Comprehensive Plan Committee's public hearing. The written comments will be accepted until August 12th. We are then going to go back, take everything we heard tonight, everything we get in written comments, go over it all with the Comprehensive Plan Committee, come up with a revised draft, and that's the draft that will then be the subject of the second public hearing with the town board. So you have another shot at, if anything you heard tonight, you don't think it was adequately addressed, you'll have another opportunity to share that with the town board. All of the meetings that we'll be having will be open to the public, and you can find all the information on the town's website, and we will certainly provide copies for the library so that people who want to see a hard copy, that will be made available. So let's see. And then in terms of just where to find the information, there's the address, and then any of the written comments should be emailed to Allison Cardon, and her email is up there. And we really thank you all for coming out this evening and sharing your thoughts, and we welcome your written comments and looking forward to hearing more of what you have to say.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, I think it's important to hear all sides of the